you said as well that the first billion-dollar company in Latin America came out of Brazil as well. It was a mobile one, right?
Yes, definitely. Wildlife is the first unicorn of the Brazilian game industry. It's interesting because it's a mobile company. They make games for mobile phones, and there is a lot of huge companies making mobile games here in Brazil. Not only Wildlife, that's worth $1 million company, but also Taps Games, and we have Gazelles, and we have a lot of another ones here in Brazil that are really creating a good and solid uh, company structure. So we have $1 million company here in São Paulo. So it's not it's a big thing. So. But I think the scene of game developers here in Brazil is more focused on PC games. When you see the number of games launched is more focused on PC and of course consoles, as consoles started to open for indie games. But we are starting to getting our first games with more broad scope. Of course, for reasons of budget and lack of investment, or games in the beginning of the decade were smaller games with very restricted scopes. But now we are achieving investment, and we are able to create more ambitious projects. And I think we had already the technical possibility to do this, but we just need this the money and the time to make the best games. And Wildlife, with $1 billion worth in the market, is one of the examples that we can make a very huge business on games in here too. We need our first big game. But also we need the budget to create this game. And we can do this without a very strong investment on our industry. And I am a very I really believe, and when you take every experience in the world, despite US and Japan, of course, when the industry was born, but every place that the game industry in some way developed in a very important hub, it was with public funding and public support. So when you get, for example, the Finnish example, as you told, they was I think 40 million industry in 2004, and after 10 years and 70 million euros of investment in their companies, they become a 1.5 billion worth industry in a country with 5 billion population. So yeah, so the example of Finnish industry is very driving, but we have in France this example, we have in Canada this example, even in UK, in Spain we have been seeing a lot of fundings and public fundings in there, local and national. So I think is something like a 50 million fund here in Germany.
It's a promise for three years in a row. Yeah. So
in 3 years. So I think it's very important to create the first impulse for creative successes. So yes, Brazil lacks of this first huge success as the first most triple A, I don't know, shape of game. And we need this investment to create this, because I think the most complex game that we made was made with a team with more than 50 people. When you get some AAA announcements, we had 500 people working in the same title. So we need this structure, we need this investment, because I think we had already the technical capabilities and artistical capabilities to create these games. And we also had a very rich culture, a very rich historic background that can create very unique games here in Brazil. Like, for example, the Polish culture was very influential and important to create Witcher and as intellectual property in the games. I think here in Brazil we have a lot of this background and stories around our indigenous legends, around our African Brazilian legends, around our popular culture. We have a lot of things to explore and use in games.
How is the situation on the, how to say that in English, on the wages of the team members? So what would you say if you see the USA as possibly the country paying the most for really good game developers, and then having the European countries, so a well-paid or an experienced programmer in Germany on a maybe not senior level, but not team leading programmer earns something between 5,000 and 6,000 euros a month, and then you have a lot of juniors earning much less, and some even more specialized people like back-end senior developer and all those guys earning 7,000-8,000 euros a month. So what would you say about the wages and the earnings?
One of our advantages is the cost of living here in Brazil is much less than Europe and US, for example. So I think a 1,000 euro wage here is a very good wage. So it's very interesting, because even not in paid that much, if you convert the currency, of course, we can create good games with a lot of less investment here because of this cost of living. So if you compare, of course, with international power of waging the people you're working in your game, of course, we face a lot of advantages. So definitely any Brazilian game company can pay the same level of wage that a big company outside Brazil in Europe or US or Canada or UK. So what make worth to work here in Brazil is that even with these wages is not as competitive internationally, the cost of living make it more balanced. So yes, it's not a very good wage because most of the companies doesn't have this investment, but also the cost of living make it easier to balance this. That's why it's very difficult to bring talents from abroad to Brazil. It's very difficult to make them go here, but also it's not so difficult to convince some Brazilian game developers, even earning a half of they maybe can earn in some place abroad. Because here we can the spendings and the costs of all of this is be very cheaper. So I think is the thing.